YouTube, what is good? Today we're going to be talking about MLB The Show 23. Unfortunately, no news yet. However, we are going to be talking about some features that I believe that would be a really good addition to add to the game. Now, some features are stuff that were in old games that they have removed. However, a lot of these things are additions to the game that I do think are going to be really good for just the health of the game going long term, especially from year to year. And I think it's just a good overall quality improvement of the game itself. Just a reminder, if you have not already, please be sure to sub to the channel. Got a lot more MLB content coming your way. Also, please be sure to leave a like and comment on this video as well. But with that being said, let's go right into the first thing that we should look at. So first thing is just the hitting changes that need to be done. I felt like this year, a lot of the stuff that was a good swing, what should be a good swing, squared up with the PCI, good timing, a lot of those ended up being for outs. Now, I do think that is something that is just something that happens in baseball, and I understand its place in the game for that to happen. This is a baseball simulator, of course. However, I feel like they happen too frequently to actually be comfortable with, and a lot of times, especially in clutch situations, and even on higher difficulties, there's a lot of times you get great contact with the ball, however, the ball just goes nowhere, or the ball just gets caught and it's hit like 115 miles an hour and somehow doesn't go through the guy's forearm. Now, another thing that plays into this is the elevation. I do feel like the multiplier that they used for the elevation in this game did not scale well. It seemed like when you played at a max elevation stadium, everything left way too easily. You had low exit velocities going for 420 feet, and then on the counterpart of that, you have the low elevation stadiums where you could have a guy with 125 power, the best launch angle, the best swing you could possibly make, and for some reason it just gets caught at the warning track because there's just no elevation whatsoever, and for some reason the ball just won't travel. Now, I do know elevation is a major factor in how the ball flies. As you can see with Colorado, in real life there's a lot more home runs than most other stadiums. However, I do also feel like this is one of those things where, you know, it is still a video game. You could try to replicate that in the game as well. However, I feel like there is no really true way to get an actual realistic feel to how the ball will fly, because I feel like there's too many inputs to actually code into the game that would influence it. I've had multiple instances, for example, on my part, where I have completely squared a ball up. It is right in the middle of the PCI, great timing. However, for some reason, it ends up with like a 45-degree or higher launch angle. And when you look at it, you know, there is a little bit of RNG in the game. I do feel like that is something that happens a bit too much. Also, another thing involving hitting that I think SDS can improve on is the reporting of the statistics that they show through their game. Now, this is not something that a lot of people look at. I know for me, I'm a bit of a stat nerd, so I'm the one that goes in and looks at these things. However, I do feel like, you know, a perfect, good, okay for their batting averages. I don't think that's specific enough for the community, especially the top players, because let's be honest, I've seen it myself. I've seen a horrible PCI be called a good contact. Obviously, that should not be the case. They do record what's called a PCI rating in the batter analysis. It ranks it all the way from what I believe is either 0 or 1, all the way up to 15 and perfect. Now, I do think that these numbers, I think, would be a really good idea to report. It might kind of pollute this a little bit, but I would love to see if I get a 14 PCI, which is near perfect, but if I'm good timing, late or early, how would those averages break down from there? And honestly, I don't know if SDS is looking at it like that, but if they're not looking at it like that already, I do feel like that could show a lot of problems in the game that they think are not present. One thing that really bothered me this year as well, especially with the hitting, is the inside pitch that you're very late on and it just bloops over the first baseman's head. Again, it's not the fact that it happens, it's the fact that it happens way too often. But I do feel like more specifics in the statistic reporting is a really good thing to at least explain to the community, hey, this is why we think the game is working as operational as we think it is. So next up, we're going to be talking about changes to Diamond Dynasty that I feel like SDS could make. First off, Universal DH should be added. I do feel like this could cause a little bit of a balancing issue. However, I feel like as long as the actual MLB is doing Universal DH, I feel like an Ultimate Team of baseball should do this as well. Of course, this is a baseball simulator. You want to try to replicate it as much as you can. Of course, if you're trying to replicate it, you have to follow the rules that the game follows. Next up, like Madden, I feel like it'd be a really cool idea to add some sort of incentive for having a theme team where your team gets boosted to play certain people on a certain team. Like Madden here in the highlighted section, if you have so many components of a team, they add to a specific tier, which adds specific stats to your player, which could benefit your team. Now, not only is this just a good idea to have, you know, just unique teams, but this also allows you to have a team with players that you wouldn't normally use. But like for me, example, I'm a Yankee fan. I would love to have an all Yankee team, even just for fun every now and then, go into a couple ranked games and see if I can get some wins. Right now, a Yankees themed team, it is pretty good, don't get me wrong, but there is so much more of an advantage to go into a God Squad ranked game than there is to have any sort of theme team whatsoever. Like Madden, you do have your God Squads that exist. However, there is viability in a theme team because of these boosts. Next up is just content in general. I do feel like they are kind of recycling older cards just for the nostalgia of it. I do feel like bringing back Team Affinity as its own separate program is a good idea as well. It allows both online and offline players to actually achieve cards at any point in the game cycle. They can push it off if they'd like to. Also, for me specifically, I played the game a lot this year. A lot of times when I finished the featured program, I felt like there really wasn't anything to work towards because all the XP I was gaining wasn't going to anything. So having a separate program than the featured program that you could work towards even after you finish the feature program, like Team Affinity, that is something that you could work towards when you feel like there is nothing really else to do at the moment. I also feel like this does help your average player as well, because the average player might not be reaching things like World Series or going flawless in VR. So these are kinds of things that you could have in the community to not only just have some good cards here and there, but it could also kind of carry a player that might not be as fortunate enough to be a World Series player. And although they might not have the best cards, they still have a pretty viable team that they could play well with. Next up is the game connectivity. If you were not aware, MLB The Show operates on what's called a peer-to-peer connection, which means you and your opponent are connected to each other directly. There's no middleman of a server. I do think that there should be some sort of dedicated server that both sides can connect to. I think this just would help overall with game stability. Desyncs would happen less, and I feel like overall this would just be a better gaming experience because things could be as consistent as possible at that point. Next up is offline changes of the game. I do feel like having franchise being expanded, almost looking like a Madden where you can go and see trade values. It's not just a letter grade, it's an actual bar that shows you the amount of value that they have. I also feel like the game really isn't that in-depth, especially from season to season. Not a whole lot happens that's different. You can't really change any sort of new team or rebrand the team, and if you do, it's kind of limited to what you're able to do. I feel like with Stadium Creator that's been introduced in the past 2 games and franchise, those are 2 things that can go hand in hand, and you can have a really good in-depth franchise system, especially with an expansion team system or anything just like rebranding an old team. Like for example, if you want to move the A's, which they should, you can make your own stadium and say, oh, this is the new A's stadium. They're now in whatever city. And you can just have a lot of fun with it and have unique experiences with it. Road to the Show does need to be revamped as well. Quite honestly, I don't know what to change. I just feel like it's just a boring game mode after like the first season. A lot of players just use it to upgrade their created players for Diamond Dynasty. But besides that, there really isn't a whole lot to do in Road to the Show besides just create as many guys as you can and try to dominate the league. A lot of guys maybe that do some sort of Hall of Fame or Legend type situation where they're trying to hit or pitch or whatever, but ultimately the mode itself is pretty lackluster, and even just upgrading your guy, I feel like it'd be a good idea to have a separation between Diamond Dynasty and Road to the Show. Last on the list of the important changes we would love to see in MLB The Show 23 is bring back the old UI of the game. This look was so unique and it looked so good. It changed based on what your favorite team was. You had your team stars in the background. You have the stadium. This was just honestly such a really good design. It was really unique to what I would experience in any sort of game whatsoever in sports. And honestly, this is a great way to connect the player base to their favorite teams. Like for example, of course, I'm a Yankee fan. I see Aaron Judge on the screen. I go to play, I go, hell yeah, that's our favorite player. But I can go to Diamond Dynasty, things could change. And honestly, like looking at MLB The Show 21 and MLB The Show 22, it's a very simple UI, which is a good thing to some extent, but I don't think it really shows any sort of uniqueness to the game. It's just kind of like purple buttons that you just kind of click and go from there. But there's a little bit of branding to it. It's pretty cool. You know, at least, you know, for my favorite team in my mind, I would love to see my favorite players and just the team logo, stadium in the background, whatever the case might be. I feel like that would just be a really good thing to bring back. But that is going to be all for today's video. I appreciate you guys for watching this. If you have any other things that you might want to be added to MLB The Show 23, leave a comment below. Please be sure to like this video as well and sub to the channel. We got a lot more MLB content coming your way, especially when we get some news for MLB The Show 23. I appreciate you guys, as always, for watching this video. Have a good one. I'll catch you in the next one.